Our work has some things about it which we sometimes overlook or forget. Now compare what we do to other jobs. Well, we operate on our own a lot. We're active. We move around. We have to be good with tools. And we have to make a lot of choices on our own. We have to know which way is best, most efficient to do a job, and safe. That's important. We have to work within the limits of safe practices, or we're asking for an accident. Everything has its limits. Now you take tools, for example. Tools have a limit as to what they can do for us. You take the body. Your body has its limits too. Sometimes we lose sight of things that are familiar to us. Can't see the forest for the trees. Well, that's when the trouble can start, especially with poles and ladders. I'm talking about doing things the right way, following practices, recognizing limits. Nobody plans on having accidents. Nobody plans on falling. But it happens through human error. Sometimes it happens through misuse of tools. Now, we use hand lines, voltage testers, screwdrivers, dikes, ladders, climbers. All these tools allow us to go up there and do our work. We have to go up there to do our work. But some people get careless and they fall. And you take pole climbing. Climbers are a reliable tool, and we all learn the right way to go up and come down a pole. So what happens? Why do people fall? Well, we found that most cutouts occur coming down the pole. The reason? Cracks, weather checks, knots, defects in the pole surface. Climbing properly means paying attention. On the way up, you get a visual picture of the pole surface. Coming down safely means concentrating on the picture you got going up. Taking it one step at a time. Concentrate. Distraction can mean trouble. The gaff can't dig in, starts to slip, and we fall. All of it unnecessary. If only we concentrate. Ladders. Most of the time we use them correctly. Most people don't think of a ladder as a tool, but it is. And like any other tool, it works for us if we use it right. But if we don't follow practices all the way, we're in for some trouble, especially when you're up on a ladder. Now, you take what happened to Steve. Situations that can create accidents can happen to anyone, even people with a lot of experience. A lapse in concentration on a routine job can take anyone past the limit. Steve had a job like that. Routine. The owner of a residence had planned to renovate. Nothing unusual. Repairs, painting, general improvements. He wanted the side of the building cleaned up. He wanted to have everything neat and in place before he started the renovation. A routine job. Steve placed his ladder in position to work. He checked the angle. He placed a wedge to secure the footing and went to work. It was a simple matter of placing a new first attachment and moving the drop wire. Everything was rolling along until he went to move the drop. The drop wire clamp was old. The shim was stuck. He needed more leverage. Steve wasn't thinking about the street. He forgot about his clearance over the street. He passed the limit.
We all know what happened. Steve knew how to do the job. It was routine. We found that serious accidents happen, even to people like Steve with many, many years of experience. They push the limits. Sooner or later, they have an accident. It causes a great deal of pain. Sometimes it even causes death. What is it that makes people not follow safe practices, huh? Well, sometimes it's haste, fatigue. Maybe it's a feeling of frustration or a feeling of pressure. Or maybe it's just that we've gotten away with shortcuts before. We end up taking too much for granted. We lose respect for the potential danger, but it's there. Every time we go up. In Steve's case, it was just one moment of forgetfulness, one moment of carelessness. 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 Was Steve deliberately taking dangerous shortcuts? In this case, it was due to a lack of concentration. He knew the right way. He meant well. But it wasn't enough. Nobody wants to end up on an accident report. Nobody wants to be a statistic. Hospitals, pain, and the effect on other people's lives as well as our own. No one wants that. But it happens. Throughout the Bell system, some people try to shortcut practices. But there are no shortcuts to safety, only shortcuts to disaster. And take what happened to Richard.
Maybe shortcuts isn't quite the way to describe what happens. There are times when people do things on a job that just don't make any sense at all. Richard had to replace a drop wire running to a residence. For some reason, he was to ignore 3 basic practices: relieving tension on the strand, placing his ladder at the wrong angle, and then failing to secure himself to the ladder with his body belt and safety strap. He was all set up for an accident. Once Richard cut the drop and released the tension, it was too late. hard to believe that someone could do what Richard did. But this is what happened. People pushed the limits. When we investigate these accidents, we find that the worker usually falls like an off-balance diver. Lands on his head, his neck, his shoulders, or his back. The injury is usually very severe and often results in death. All this could be avoided by following practices. Practices. A dry-sounding word. What does it mean? Does it mean rules? Yes, it means that. It doesn't mean safe procedures. Yes, it means that too. But it means more than that. It means people. The people who develop these practices. People with experience. People who are professionals. People who are committed to getting the job done safely. Many of them come from years of hands-on experience in the field. They have practical knowledge, craft knowledge, engineering knowledge, and most of them have been up poles and ladders themselves. They set the limits. As they develop a practice, they test it. They look at every angle. Now I ask you, how can we ignore this resource that serves us all? Why would anyone take a chance with his life? It doesn't make sense, but people do, all the time. Whether it's a lack of concentration, fatigue, haste, a lack of common sense, whatever the cause, there are people who don't follow practices. They push the limit and they pay the price. Sometimes when we look at what happened in an accident, we can understand how a mistake was made. We can also see how easily it could have been avoided. Harry and Tom were working on a pole removal. Nothing unusual, except for a bad-looking pole. Tom took no chances. He tested it thoroughly, first with a pike pole. Tom sounded the pole. It still seemed okay. Finally, he dug and probed the base. Thoroughly. Completely around the base. Following practices. The pole tested okay. It looked bad, but it proved okay. Perhaps Tom would have done a good job of testing the next pole if he hadn't found the pole that looked bad to be sound. Perhaps he would have seen that he was taking a chance. Perhaps he would have tested more thoroughly. It all seemed so easy, so simple, until he cut the drops to the terminal pole. It only takes ignoring one practice one time to bring on death. You know, the body's a wonderful instrument. It can do all kinds of things for us. It can push, pull, grip, climb, balance. But it too has its limits. Working safely is really working smarter.
The only way to go up and work on poles and ladders is the right way, with respect for the limits of the laws of nature, the laws of physics. A ladder needs to be inspected and kept in good working condition in order to function safely. The ladder lock should be engaged properly. The line should be tied securely to one of the rungs on the bottom section. The footing must be secure. The strand hook should be properly secured to the strand.
The practices for ladders and poles are there for you. The ladder is your tool. Don't let the law of limits take over. That's when a good human being becomes a statistic on a report, except to his family and friends. There are no shortcuts to safety. There are only shortcuts to injury or even death. It happens. It can happen to anyone. The practices are there for you. They set safe limits. Maybe it would be a good thing for all of you if you could remember some of the feelings that you had when you first went up. In a training area, just like this one. When you first learned to climb, you had respect for what you were doing. Let's keep that respect now and every day that we're working. Then we can all go home at the end of every day safely.
When you first learned to climb, you had respect for what you were doing. Let's keep that respect. Then we can all go home at the end of every day safely.